The old town of Greybridge had always held an air of mystery, but nothing was as shrouded in darkness as Ravenwood House. The mansion, perched on the outskirts of town, had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. Its once elegant architecture now stood as a crumbling relic, overrun by weeds and the relentless march of time. Yet, despite its dilapidated state, Ravenwood House had never lost its reputation as a place of inexplicable phenomena. The most chilling of these tales centered around the silent watcher, a spectral entity said to observe the world from the mansion's shadowed windows. One crisp autumn evening, a group of 4 friends, Tom, Rachel, Jake and Mia, decided to investigate the house after hearing the haunting stories. Tom, the de facto leader of the group, was a staunch skeptic, dismissing the legends as mere superstition. Rachel, with her fascination for paranormal activity, was eager to document the experience. Jake and Mia, though apprehensive, were caught up in the thrill of the unknown and the desire to uncover the truth. As twilight descended, they approached Ravenwood House armed with cameras, EMF detectors, and a sense of adventure. The mansion loomed over them, its dark silhouette accentuated by the fading light. The wind howled as if protesting their intrusion, sending chills down their spines. Ignoring their growing unease, they pushed open the heavy, rusted door and entered the mansion. The interior of Ravenwood House was a snapshot of forgotten grandeur. Dust-covered chandeliers hung like cobwebbed spectres from the ceiling, and faded portraits stared blankly from the walls. The group split up to explore different sections, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Tom and Rachel headed to the second floor, where the silent watcher was rumoured to appear, while Jake and Mia explored the ground floor. As Tom and Rachel made their way up the creaking staircase, they noticed that the air grew inexplicably colder. Their breath formed clouds in the air, and the sense of unease intensified. They reached the second floor, where the oppressive silence was punctuated only by the occasional drip of water from a leaky pipe. The moonlight filtering through the broken windows cast eerie shadows across the walls. Rachel set up her camera and began to document their surroundings, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke into the lens. Tom, though skeptical, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They approached the room where the silent watcher was said to be seen. The door, slightly ajar, revealed a dark, musty interior. The room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets, and the air was thick with dust. Tom shone his flashlight towards the windows, searching for any sign of movement. Rachel scanned the room with her EMF detector, which emitted an occasional beep, heightening their anxiety. As they stood in the room, the temperature suddenly dropped and their breath became visible again. The silence was so profound that it seemed to press in on them from all sides. Suddenly, Rachel's camera picked up a strange, flickering light. Tom, focused on the window, saw a dark silhouette move across the glass, a shape that seemed to be watching them. He pointed it out to Rachel, who looked up, her face going pale. The figure was indistinct, its form barely discernible, but it was unmistakably there. Tom's skepticism faltered as he felt a cold gust of wind rush through the room, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. They stumbled, trying to relight their torches, their breaths coming in rapid, panicked gasps. The temperature continued to plummet, and an oppressive feeling of dread settled over them. Downstairs, Jake and Mia had begun to experience their own unsettling phenomena. Jake's EMF detector was going haywire, and Mia felt an icy presence brush past her. They called out to Tom and Rachel, but their voices were swallowed by the increasing noise of the storm outside. The mansion seemed to come alive with creaks and groans, and the feeling of being watched grew more intense. Back upstairs, Tom and Rachel finally managed to get their flashlights working. They turned to the window again, and the silent watcher was gone. But as they turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. Panic set in as they tried to force the door open, their efforts futile. The storm outside reached its peak, the wind howling and the rain lashing against the windows. In the dim light of their flashlights, Tom and Rachel could see shadows moving in the corners of the room. The temperature dropped even further, and a low, mournful wail filled the air. The silent watcher had returned, its presence more palpable than ever. Desperate to escape, Tom and Rachel finally managed to break the door open and stumbled into the hallway, where they found Jake and Mia. The four friends regrouped, their faces pale and their eyes wide with fear. They made their way down the stairs, but the mansion seemed to conspire against them, with shadows shifting and the darkness closing in. As they reached the front door, it wouldn't open. The storm outside had intensified, and the wind howled like a beast trapped in the mansion. The friends tried to force their way out, but the door remained stubbornly shut. The feeling of the silent watcher's gaze was unbearable, and the friends felt as though they were being slowly suffocated by the darkness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door gave way. The friends burst into the stormy night, their faces etched with fear and relief. They fled from Ravenwood House, their hearts racing and their minds struggling to process what they had experienced. In the days that followed, the friends tried to come to terms with their encounter. Their footage and recordings revealed nothing unusual, but the terror they felt was all too real. They vowed never to return to Ravenwood House, leaving it to the shadows and the silent watcher that still lingered behind its darkened windows. The mansion remained a place of fear and mystery, its secrets locked away in the silence of the night. In the heart of a forgotten town, where the mist perpetually clings to the cobblestones and the wind whispers through abandoned alleyways, there stands an old, decrepit mansion known as Ravenwood House. Its once grand facade is now a canvas for creeping ivy and decay, with broken windows that seem to watch the world with hollow, unseeing eyes. For decades, tales of eerie occurrences and inexplicable phenomena have surrounded this mansion. But the legend that truly terrifies the locals is the story of the Silent Watcher. It is said that every night, as the clock strikes midnight, the air grows inexplicably cold and the shadows seem to deepen. Those brave enough to venture near Ravenwood House at this hour speak of a presence, a spectral figure that stands motionless behind the dirty, cracked windows on the second floor. This figure, known only as the Silent Watcher, is described as a tall, indistinct shape shrouded in darkness, its face obscured and its intentions unreadable. There are no accounts of any sounds, no footsteps or whispers, just an oppressive silence that sends chills down the spine of anyone who dares to look. One particularly stormy night, a young woman named Eliza, driven by a blend of skepticism and curiosity, decides to unravel the mystery of Ravenwood House for herself. Armed with a flashlight, a digital recorder, and a resolve to disprove the local legends, she approaches the mansion. The storm rages around her, its thunderclaps muffling her footsteps as she makes her way up the creaking stairs to the entrance. The heavy wooden door, long untouched, groans open to reveal a dark, musty interior. Eliza's flashlight cuts through the gloom, revealing faded wallpaper peeling away from the walls and furniture covered in sheets of dust. With every step deeper into the mansion, the temperature drops, and Eliza can see her breath clouding in front of her. The silence is unnerving, punctuated only by the occasional groan of the building or the distant rumble of thunder. She makes her way to the second floor, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approaches the room where the Silent Watcher is said to appear, she notices an old, ornate mirror leaning against the wall, its surface clouded and cracked. The mirror seems to reflect nothing but darkness, its glass a gateway to an unknown void. When the clock finally strikes midnight, Eliza stands frozen in the dim light of her flashlight. The air grows colder, and she can almost feel the oppressive weight of an unseen gaze upon her. Her recorder picks up nothing but static, and the flashlight flickers erratically. Summoning all her courage, she turns to the window where the Silent Watcher is supposed to be. Her eyes widen as she sees the figure, a dark silhouette standing rigidly, unmoving. As she tries to focus, the figure seems to dissolve into the shadows, but the sense of being watched only intensifies. Eliza's flashlight flickers one last time before going out entirely, plunging her into darkness. Panic sets in as she fumbles to relight it, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Suddenly, a chilling whisper echoes through the room, though it is indistinguishable from the howling wind outside. The temperature drops even further, and Eliza feels a cold hand or something like it brush against her arm. She turns around frantically, her flashlight coming back to life just in time to illuminate the empty room. Desperate to escape, Eliza races down the stairs, her fear propelling her faster than she ever thought possible. The mansion seems to groan and shift around her, as if it is alive and reacting to her terror. She bursts through the front door, the storm hitting her face with a blast of cold rain. She doesn't stop running until she reaches the safety of the streetlights, her heart racing and her mind reeling from the encounter. In the days that follow, Eliza's experience becomes the talk of the town. She has trouble sleeping, plagued by dreams of that shadowy figure and the chilling silence that accompanied it. She finds herself looking over her shoulder and jumping at the slightest sound. Though she tries to tell herself it was just an overactive imagination and the result of the storm, she can't shake the feeling that the silent watcher is still out there, waiting, watching a permanent fixture in the forgotten mansion's darkened windows. Ravenwood House remains an enigma, its secrets locked away behind its rotting walls, and the silent watcher's presence lingers in the whispers of those who dare to remember.